generally thinking about the patient more as a typical consumer and not just this healthcare box. Patients are consumers, and what they want out of their experience in healthcare, I think, mirrors what they want out of their experience in all other service areas. They want to have real relationships with a provider. They want like a nice environment when you get into the office. They don't want to wait for, an hour. They want to have ability to contact you, not just, have to make an appointment and come into the location. So I think that's really critical and will be something that will allow healthcare organizations to really thrive, is if they offer experiences that are what consumers generally want.
New choices, new players, new models of care. Consumer first healthcare is everywhere. For us to build the future, to see what's new, we gotta look at the world from a different point of view. Consumer innovation ain't going away. I say it's here to stay. Today it leads the way. We gotta drop the silos. We're all the same team. Experience, business, tech, and marketing. So join us now. Join the revolution. Consumer first health is the evolution. Status quo or like status no. Yeah, this is the healthcare rap. Yo, come on, let's go.
Welcome back to the leading podcast about consumer-centered healthcare. We're continuing to drive change at the intersection of traditional sick care and consumer-based well care. Our goal is to influence healthcare leaders to design products and services that are centered around what people actually need and expect, and to inform everyday consumers about those products and services. I'm Jared Johnson, and this is episode 436. Today, we have the Flava of the Week about Woebot Health pivoting away from its direct-to-consumer mental health app. Why am I focusing on different lessons about the app's shutdown? And how can we all pivot to build something better for the future? I'll talk about that. Then Neel Bhargava, partner at NB Group, shares why his firm is investing in fitness and consumer wellness, and why their targets also include OnePeak Medical, hospice, and direct primary care. It's time for the awesomeness, y'all. Are you ready? Let's go. Flava of the Week. As 1.5 million users say rest in peace to Woebot Health's pioneering app, let's take a moment to pause and reflect on the good they've done in the world. Right off the bat, notice I didn't say let's double down on what went wrong. That's covered in plenty of detail elsewhere. What I'd like to focus on is what went right during the nearly 8 years that the app made a difference in the world. By way of background, Woebot offered teens a non-prescription digital mental health tool. It included content specific to teens, including media literacy, bullying in school settings, body image, and psychoeducation. To their credit, they gave plenty of advanced warning of their timeline, emailing users in April about the change and following through with shutting down on June 30th. Like I said, I don't want the focus here to be on what didn't go as planned, but a couple of things are worth noting. According to Stat, shutting down the app is largely attributable to the cost and challenge of fulfilling the FDA's requirements for marketing authorization. Their CEO, Allison Darcy, was quoted as saying that the core issue was timing. The regulatory science simply wasn't yet at a place that could accommodate the kind of innovation that they were bringing forward at the stages they were operating. In addition to regulations not keeping up, it's been reported that the company also felt the effects of a perfect storm of generative AI competition and their direct-to-consumer model struggling with user engagement and monetization. What's the consumer lens here? My key takeaway breaks a bit from the conventional wisdom. Where I'm focusing is that there's such a learning curve here, and the ones who seem to suffer the most when digital health can't overcome that curve tend to be consumers who need that care the most. I think the digital health market is super hard right now. I think ChatGPT and the like are changing our expectations on a daily basis as we learn how much more they can do for us. And I think mental health solutions will continue to face the historical stigma of people thinking that they're somehow lesser human beings when they ask for help. You and I both know that isn't true, but we need to continue to educate the people around us so they know that it's okay to not be okay. So what's next? Thankfully, there's a silver lining here. Woebot is now embracing clinical and enterprise partnerships, pivoting from B2C to system integration. Although they shut down the app in its current iteration, they're working on something much better. I think it says a lot about Allison Darcy that former team members continue to give her flowers for her determination. As one former team member told me, it takes guts of steel to have a pivot like that and steer the vision. Indeed, we look forward to her next chapter. In the meantime, we'll once again pay tribute to the solution experienced by more than 1.5 million users who logged on for some help from a cartoony life coach and robot friend who is ready to listen 24/7. Let's focus on what's going right in digital health a little more frequently so we can acknowledge the progress that's being made in everyday lives and, like Woebot, build something even better for the future. That's another way that we'll build the healthcare of tomorrow, and that's the Flava of the Week. Hey y'all, I'm here with Jessica Holton, co-founder of Ours Privacy. Jessica, how do health systems know how much marketing data to track?
Know what you're optimizing for. We see and hear about a lot of teams that are tracking everything they possibly can, which you would think is more info is better, and we can make more decisions if we have more information. But actually, it just sends more data that is potentially PHI, and you have less control over it when you're tracking everything. Instead, choose 1 to 2 key metrics that you are tracking and focus on those metrics.
Thanks, Jessica. Visit oursprivacy.com for more information and tell them you heard about it on the Healthcare Wrap.
Healthcare Wrap is sponsored by Cyril. Whether you're trying to drive patient volume as a healthcare provider, boost membership enrollment as a health insurer, drive improved adherence rates in pharma, or deepen strategic B2B partnerships throughout the healthcare ecosystem, Cyril can help you with your go-to-market efforts and growth targets, enabling you to reach the clinical and financial goals of your healthcare organization. For more information, go to Cyril.com. That's CYRALL.com.
All right, listeners, let's get into the flow. We're going to talk about a couple of facets of healthcare that I'm really curious about, but they have a lot to do with where the growth is happening right now. And I couldn't be more excited to bring on Neel Bhargava as our guest this week. Let's welcome you, Neel. Welcome to Healthcare Wrap.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking.
Let's hear a little bit about your background. What would you like our listeners to know about you and kind of the work you're doing now, how you got there?
I am a partner at NB Group. We're a private investment firm that I started about 8 years ago. In 2017. And what we do is partner with founder and family-owned businesses in the healthcare and sort of broader health and wellness multi-location space to pursue accelerated growth strategies. We're looking for typically well-run, growing businesses, but there's an opportunity to partner with the founder to get it on an even more faster-paced growth trajectory, professionalize, really get it to that next level, build infrastructure, all that. We've got a pretty good track record of doing so since we started. My background more broadly is in a mix of sort of larger scale private equity investing, management consulting, a little bit of operational experience mixed in there as well, but really now focused on what we do here at NB Group that I outlined earlier.
Fantastic. Like, what's one of your favorite things about that? What do you enjoy about helping companies grow?
The companies we invest in typically have a lot of ways to grow. That's what characteristic we look for. We call it multiple growth levers. We want to see a company being able to expand their locations or offer new services or do acquisitions, like multiple ways and things they can do. There's a lot of opportunity. That's a big positive, but it can also be distracting or even overwhelming for management teams, the operators of the business. So one of the things I really enjoy is working with the teams on brainstorming those ideas, but then evaluating them, prioritizing them, and helping figure out an implementation plan, a staging plan. How are we going to accomplish all this over the next 5 to 6 years that we may be collaborating? What do we want to focus on now? What do we focus on later? What do we want to deprioritize? So I think that's an area that an investment partner can really be helpful, and I really enjoy that process.
Well, let's talk about one of those investments in particular, and I believe, if I read right, it was NB Group's first investment in the healthcare sector. I'm talking about OnePeak Medical, and this was in 2021 when you invested in them. Again, tell me, like, what was attractive about that opportunity in particular, like for that to be the thing that kind of said, hey, we're going to get into healthcare?
It was our first investment into kind of traditional healthcare. We've done other things in sort of health and wellness more broadly, but true healthcare was our first investment. What attracted it to us was it was a differentiated model, a differentiated care model. I hadn't seen anything like it before. I haven't really seen anything like it since. And that innovation and the differentiated offering, the type of care they were delivering to patients is what really stood out to us. It's a branded retail healthcare model. The clinics, there's now 17 of them. They're all labeled OnePeak. It's not doctor office. This is OnePeak Medical. Regardless of where you go across the 17 locations in Oregon, you're getting a similar experience. And that we are consumer-oriented health and wellness investors. That resonated with us. It was a kind of a consumer-forward model. It's a prevention-first primary care offering. So they focus on wellness, preventative care, and they integrate traditional primary care practices with functional medicine, with cash pay elective services that benefit patients. So it's a differentiated model. It's a smaller market focus. So when we invested, it was mostly in tier 2, tier 3 markets, even some rural markets. We since have opened one location in the Portland metro, but by and large, this is still smaller market focus, which I think has a lot of benefits in terms of bringing care to patients who don't often get this type of care. And we go to market, there's a lot of pent-up demand there. So it's kind of a win-win. So all that caught our attention. And then when we dug into the financials, it was attractive. We saw a lot of growth opportunities. And it's just strong alignment with sort of growing consumer emphasis on holistic health and wellness. So we liked all that about it.
And that's helpful for context in terms of, for those who aren't familiar with OnePeak Medical, they're in the Pacific Northwest. Is that right?
All solely in Oregon right now. We'll be moving outside the state potentially, but for now, we're all in Oregon.
Well, what attracted me to even bringing them into the conversation with you is what you were just describing, is that consumer forward model, the prevention first, and then bolting on some of these cash pay elective services. And it's such an evolution of a core primary care model to begin with. And anything like that has attracted us a lot on this show. I'm curious if there's anything else that's unique about their care model, and then how you're helping advise them to say, like, what are some of those growth levers for them to focus on for the next few years as they continue to grow. Like, I guess what that leads to is what attracts new patients to a model like this.
I touched on a number of aspects that are innovative about their model. The one I didn't mention is on the provider side. So it's nurse practitioner forward. We have some MDs on staff, but a lot of our providers are nurse practitioners. And I think that does a few things for the practice. One, it allows for more patient time, which I think fosters stronger, more enduring patient-provider relationships. I think it's also the type of experience that patients increasingly want to have, spending more time talking about not just this one issue I came in for, but everything else that's going on. And I think having nurse practitioners be the bulk of the providers, it makes that a little bit more possible to offer. It also, from a organizational management standpoint, has some benefits because there is a dearth of primary care providers in the country and a lot of other specialties of healthcare as well. And I think we have a benefit of having this model that works with nurse practitioners on the supply side. They're easier to attract and retain than MDs. Frankly, there's more of them, and there's a lot of reasons for that, which we could spend a lot of time talking about. But that's one aspect of the model that I didn't mention. I think what drives patients to OnePeak is just a desire for a more holistic healthcare experience. Someone who's testing for comprehensively testing you for things that might be markers for things you should concern you or things you're really good at, and helping focus you on wellness over time. You see, there's an emerging thing. I'm sure you've probably had people on the show talk about longevity. We don't focus on longevity, but there are aspects of it integrated into our model. So I just think it really resonates with how patients want to experience healthcare today.
Oh, I totally agree. One of the episodes that's going to come up soon here in our cycle, like our current season, is like a home health test that I just got my hands on that I was able to go through myself that showed me some of those markers. But in that case, it's more of like, now what do I do with that data? How does that work into my existing primary care relationship and things like that? But I would much rather have that conversation than a conversation of like, I'm confused, I'm frustrated, I as a consumer don't know where to go to get the help I feel like I need. Like it's such a better conversation to have of how do I use the influences that I have, use the resources that I have available to me, and be confident in a direction that I'm heading in my own health and wellness journey. It is again such a different conversation, and I do credit care models like what OnePeak has driving that in the industry. So I think it's whichever came first, the care model or that desire, like it's a different type of consumer-centered care that is leading the way. I'm curious about a couple of other areas that you're investing in here. You talked about just fitness and wellness in general. There have been other investments that have been made even before OnePeak. But it sounds like this is a continued area of emphasis for you, is to invest more in fitness and consumer wellness.
Yeah.
What's attractive about that space right now? Like what in particular is kind of some of those areas that you're looking at that are like, these are areas worth us spending some time focusing on?
Since we started the firm, health and wellness has been a thematic focus for us. And within that, we made our first investment within fitness, which I put under that health and wellness umbrella. And Most of the investments we made have really touched on this theme. The reason we focus on it initially and remain really interested in it is just a belief that this is an entrenched consumer megatrend, right? Consumers are increasingly, and have been for a while, prioritizing their health and wellness, spending more of their time and money on these areas. The specifics of it may change from now. I mentioned like longevity is big and recovery. These are emerging areas, but and maybe some things that were more of a focus a few years ago have become a little bit less. But overall, the focus on health and wellness has persisted. So we believe that that's going to continue. It's not going away anytime soon. So we want to invest behind that. And we are focused on finding new investments that align with that. And I think OnePeak was just an extension of that, but we've made other investments. So there's a number of areas we're looking at right now within that, some within healthcare, some within more consumer wellness, but anything in that overall theme is interesting.
What about other areas here? What else is interesting you in healthcare markets that we haven't touched on yet besides fitness, consumer wellness? Are there other areas that you're looking at as well?
Yeah, there's a bunch of other areas beyond what we've talked about that we focus on. So we look across healthcare generally, several areas we're proactively targeting right now. A few of them that I'll mention are pediatric behavioral health. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's been a lot of investment in ABA, but there's things beyond that as well that I think are interesting. And there's different models behind that, partnering with schools and offering those services in schools versus standalone. Like we've seen some interesting things there, and it's still a very fragmented market that has a lot of growth potential. So that's one area. Hospice, another area that we think is interesting. A lot of independent players out there, really a type of care that has a lot of benefits for the patient, is just a better experience for what's really can be obviously a very tough situation, end of life care, but we think this is a good option for patients, and it's also a lower cost option for the healthcare system. So a lot of benefits all around. So that's an area we're looking at. And then another one that's more recently emerging on our radar is direct primary care, which is like a B2B model where a provider group or a practice will align with a self-insured employer and be their primary care solution for all their employees, and they get like a monthly payment per member for that. So I think that's a really interesting model that's emerging now, and we'd like to invest behind. So those are a few. There's some others, but those are a few worth mentioning.
No, it's great. In particular, DPC, direct primary care, is an area of focus for us on the show. A big fan of not even just how appealing it is for the employers, but how appealing it is for the providers and the patients. I mean, there's so much upside here, and I continue to use any chance I get on any platform to kind of bring it up. And there's a lot of corollary types of new models that are different flavors of direct primary care. I'm glad that it's a continued area of interest and an opportunity for growth there. So I would guess one of the areas that you enjoy talking about the most, or just sharing more insights about the most, is to help, how to help these organizations grow, which is clearly where your focus is here. What are you sharing? What insights or tips are you sharing in this area, just in general, without giving anything away? But what are some of those kind of macro themes or tips that you're sharing with either your portfolio companies or others in conversations about how to grow in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think one thing that we've learned and seen examples on kind of both sides on is payer mix and revenue cycle management. I think that's really critical, optimizing those and being thoughtful about what that means for your business and really investing in those capabilities. It can really drive or limit your growth and profitability. So to give you an example, if you're thinking about entering a new market, like you need to make sure you're aligned with the right payers in that market to have success. How much Medicare and Medicaid exposure you have and what sorts of patients you're seeing really affects your profitability. And it's not to say that you can't have good models that offer that. I mean, you definitely can, but you just have to be thoughtful about how that impacts the business and how it impacts the growth opportunities for the business. So that's one thing. I think generally thinking about the patient more as a typical consumer and not just this healthcare box. Like patients are consumers, and what they want out of their experience in healthcare, I think mirrors what they want out of their experience in all other like service areas. They want to have real relationships with a provider. They want like a nice environment when you get into the office. They don't want to wait for, an hour. They want to have ability to contact you, not just have to make an appointment and come into the location. So I think that's really critical and will be something that will allow healthcare organizations to really thrive, is if they offer experiences that are what consumers generally want.
I love hearing this from the investment side and the growth side, that this is a key here, because I hear about it a lot from the service design side, the marketing side of how do we help people engage in their health? Like, how do we share with them the benefits of something like, you can even take like DPC, or you can take hospice, you can take any of these areas, primary care, and you can say, like, people still need to be able to trust that this is a better experience for them. They need to know that it's there and that they can trust it. And that does take a lot. At the core of that has to be that principle of patients are consumers. And it's not even just their choices. We talk a lot about it on the show here. It's the recognition that it's also about their expectations. All the examples you just gave of the other areas of our lives. For some reason, we still need help for that to sink in across the board, across healthcare, so we can get to this better place. And we're like, we know that, we get that, and we're going to drive and innovate in different ways if we all just like really internalize that and say, like, let's have that be the place where we're starting the thoughts of how we grow and how we help a patient understand what could be good for them or a loved one. And it's just, again, it's a different conversation than we've had before. And it's great to hear that as part of it, especially on this side of the conversation. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I always like to wrap just asking our guests what gives them hope for the future. As you're aware, you can get lost in the headlines. You can just see all the things that are broken or not quite right in healthcare, and just in general. There's so many headlines every day of things that we could say are going wrong, but there's so much that's going right in the industry. And it really does come down to how we are investing in our future. Is that what gives you hope for the future? Or is it a lot of times it has to do with like our own personal interactions or encounters with the healthcare system? I'm just curious, like, well, if you're looking at it, you're like, here are the things about healthcare I'm hopeful about, the things I'm looking forward to and I feel good about. What does that bring to mind for you?
There's a lot of challenges and structural issues that need to be fixed within healthcare in the US, right? That's probably not a surprise to anyone. But as you're saying, I think there are some positives emerging and some things happening that are moving us in the right direction. And some of this, I'm biased, right, by some of the places we've invested. But one thing that gives me hope is just the increasing focus on preventative care and different ways of offering that. There's been, over the last decade, a lot of focus on value-based care as one way to do that. And that, I think, has had mixed success. But there's other models. OnePeak offers, I think, preventative care in a more fee-for-service setting. There's cash pay models. And I think you're also seeing like pull from the consumer side now. Like, this is what we want. And then people creating practices and businesses that are oriented towards that. So I think it's just much more top of mind and being discussed. What are multiple ways we can focus on prevention, which over time will really has the possibility of changing the curve of like healthcare costs in the US. So that's one area that I think is moving in the right direction.
I'll give you a final word here, Neel. Anything we haven't discussed yet that you'd love to share with our listeners?
I think we've covered some good ground. We're always looking for new investment partnership opportunities in any of the areas I mentioned or other businesses within healthcare and wellness. So I would love to speak with anyone who's doing something interesting in any of those areas and help think about opportunities for growth and whether there's an opportunity to partner or not. Just love learning about new opportunities within healthcare. So we'd love to speak with anyone who's interested.
Fantastic. And a great way for us to wrap, just knowing that's where a lot of value will be provided here. It's been great to chat through this. Again, it's an angle of everything we talk about on our show that's helpful for us to be at the core of any conversations that we're having and to see what you're seeing in the market. So I just want to thank you for everything you're doing to make healthcare more consumer-centered. And thanks for joining us today, Neel.
Yeah, thanks, Jared.